Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, Disney's latest live-action film swings into theaters with The Jungle Book. Gang violence has everyone on alert in the latest Barbershop installment. Kevin Costner is feeling a bit selfless in Criminal. And Christopher Plummer struggles to remember. So let's start with The Jungle Book. This had an amazing 100 million plus opening weekend. Justin, let's hear about it.
As if there's anyone left who doesn't know what The Jungle Book is about, but
True.
Bare necessities.
for those who are uninitiated, and I am sad for you, newcomer Neil Sethi plays Mowgli, an orphan boy literally brought up by wolves. However, when his outsider presence angers the likes of Shere Khan, a tiger that tends to harass the village, voiced by Idris Elba, Mowgli escapes into the jungle to gradually come to terms with his differences. Lupita Nyong'o, Bill Murray, Christopher Walken, and Ben Kingsley lend supporting voices. If there's one thing that's made abundantly clear very early on into this movie, this is not the Jungle Book that we all know and love from the 60s. So parents who have children under the age of 10, I would think very carefully about taking your kids to see this one. But is that a bad thing? It's nice that they're giving the Jungle Book a new identity. It's a lot more intense. It's a lot more engaging. The 3D works surprisingly well without compromising the spirit, I would say. But the problem is when it tries to be an homage to the original with these really awkward placements of some of the iconic songs, the bare necessities, I Want to Be Like You. It comes out of nowhere and it sticks out like a sore thumb. There's a lot of fun to be had with this movie, but for me, I kind of felt split on the live action take, which might be a little bit generous because it's really just human and CGI.
Well, it's still live action. It's not animated, that's for sure. Regardless of whether some of the animals are not there. But for me, I've never seen the original. It's one of the few Disney classics that I've missed. Mm-hmm. And if I ever did, I was super, super young and don't remember. So I sort of had an original perspective on it, not having anything to compare it to. I thought the visuals were outstanding. I thought director Jon Favreau did a great job with the visuals. You're right, the 3D is excellent in this. And I thought Sethi, the boy, was fantastic. I mean, he's in every scene of this movie. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like we mentioned, the animals aren't actually there, and he's sort of, playing off of nothing. We just talked about this in Allegiant, how, that's so CGI heavy. Everyone's having a hard time with their reaction shots and looking stupid. And I mean, this kid really, really just acts the heck out of every one of these scenes. I thought he did a great job. I guess I admit the songs are a little bit misplaced, but I mean, I don't know. Are you going to do the Jungle Book and not have the bare necessities? I thought that was very kind of natural, Bill Murray was singing it, explains, that's a, song that we sing, and so then they sing it. I don't know. It seemed all right. Joe, what about the music? Did you...
Well, I guess I'm sort of in between you guys. Like, I think that because, about 90% of this movie is not musical at all, I think that would be fine to pretty much eliminate that. Like, I think Baloo whistling it as an homage would have been fine.
Oh, yeah. That would have worked.
Like, I mean, they weren't terrible or anything. They were just kind of weird. In fact, my review, I basically state that that's really the only major negative I can think of, is that those songs don't really seem like they really need to be there. They are a little awkwardly placed. Like, it's not terrible, but you can tell that they're putting them in there because they were there before.
Nostalgia.
People are accepting it, and they're expecting it, but...
So would you have preferred, both of you, I guess, would you have preferred a full-on musical then?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean,
just excise them completely.
Like, it was... Most of the movie where the music is not present is fine. It's just being presented as a more serious story, and the original is a musical, and it's fine, but, I mean, this is presented as doing something different, and I'm fine with that.
I mean, look at last year's Cinderella. It's a serious live-action movie, and the majority of the songs they save until the end credits.
It's an example, yeah.
I think Cinderella's story, though, is more iconic than the songs. I think Jungle Book, bare necessities is the number one thing people think of.
It's true.
Joe, did you get to see it in 3D?
No, but
Okay.
I thought the visuals were great despite
Yeah.
that, though. Like, even, I could even tell, like, wow, this movie looks pretty gorgeous. And I could certainly tell the scenes where they were trying to showcase the 3D more than others. Which,
Without question.
ironically, without the 3D, kind of made it seem too obvious and maybe a little annoying, but I
Yeah.
I understand why it's there. It's just that I'd say that, on the whole, it really did impress me. And Dan, I know that you're typically not a fan of the talking animals and the moving lips, so how'd this one work for you?
Actually, you're right. I'm not. I think when it's done properly, like it is here, I think it's excellent. I think the problem is a lot of it looks super corny or forced or just very fake.
If they didn't look super CGI, I would have agreed with you on this one. But I'll be honest, it took me probably about a good 15, 20 minutes to adjust to this.
Well, what about the mocap, though? Because a lot of the characters aren't not specific. I guess that is part of CGI. But, mocap, I think we can all agree, looks a lot more real
Fluid,
and
yeah.
fluid. That's a good word,
Yeah.
than others. And certainly that ape that we see in Planet of the Apes and the Christopher Walken character shows up again. And obviously that's more of a mocap than a CGI.
Agreed.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I thought Walken did a great job.
Yeah, actually, he as Louis,
I thought
Yep.
him and Elba were probably the two best of the voice actors.
they were some great villains, I have to say. They
Yeah.
were very, very frightening, definitely in their scenes. They certainly used their villains well. Unfortunately, one of the big villains, voiced by Johansson, Ka, only gets one scene, which is
Yeah.
pretty much just there
Wasn't
for exposition.
That basically the bulk of the character in the original, though?
That's true, but Ka does return again. So
Okay.
he, I don't know. I think that's kind of another thing I did want to mention is that I felt like there were some parts of the film that were kind of rushed or skipped over completely from the previous film.
Okay.
Like there's some interesting thematics about going into the human world versus the jungle, which involves a young girl who is completely excised from the movie. So there are major plot points that are changed, and I do think that as silly as the original movie was, you did get a stronger sense of the animals when they're there. Like they turned the elephants into sort of this religious metaphor for the higher elements of Hinduism, which, while I did like, it also kind of took away the elephants as characters, basically.
Yeah.
So there are little things which didn't really hurt the movie, but I thought were noticeably absent. And it does tie back in with how it's resolved with the fire and whatnot, and saving the elephants. So, I mean, I thought they were used well, but they're put on the status as being like the kings of the jungle, and yet they don't really do much with Shere Khan, where in the movie they kind of explain what their issue is with Khan and where the relation
Well,
is.
I think that's interesting you say that because that was really my one negative of this movie is that not having to compare it to the original, I was a little bit disappointed with some of the characterizations, and I do wish that it was a little bit longer to flesh some of that out. It's about an hour and 45 minutes, and we've seen these Disney live actioners go, Oz was well over 2 hours. Maleficent, I believe, was about 2. I feel like this could have easily been a full 2 hours to flesh some of that stuff out because my big issue is there was no feeling that I had about this movie. I enjoyed it.
Well-
I liked watching it.
But never, touched you.
Yeah, like compare it to Zootopia, the other great Disney movie of the year.
Definitely.
And that one rang way more emotions out of me with, a similarly, I don't want to say basic story.
Well,
but
all right. I will be honest. I actually do think I prefer this version to the original.
Okay.
In all honesty. I really do. Mostly just because of the execution. I mean, from a visual perspective.
Favreau is a great director.
It feels more...
He is, but I also...
It feels more epic in scale. It actually feels like, a Jungle Book movie. It feels... It just feels more majestic. The original one, it's more quaint. It's cute. But, I mean, the story's still solid here. I think it's really fantastic. Plus, Jungle Book's never been one of my favorites. But there are some things I will admit do work better. Like, another example, you were talking about feeling... I think that they were going off it because of the nostalgia of the Jungle Book. Like, for instance, Baloo. You're expected to know the character and like him automatically because he's Baloo, and that's why they don't take as much time with that plot point when they get together.
Never mind the whole fact that for about the first 25 minutes that you meet Baloo in the movie, he's extraordinarily unlikable.
And, I think Idris Elba does a great job in his portrayal of Shere Khan, But Shere Khan technically works better in the original because he has more direct contact with Mowgli. And another example of huge drama, he basically kills Baloo. That whole fight was stretched out as the big final, before he gets chased off. And, it's obviously Baloo does live, but, it's made much more dramatic. Whereas in this one, they fight, it's a little tussle, and then there's more focus on Mowgli and Shere Khan, which works well for this movie because they tied in more directly with his backstory, but you had more emotional connection with Baloo and what happened to him in the first movie. So it's not that they did one necessarily better than the other, but they changed their priorities. I think they're very, very different movies, so it's kind of hard to compare.
That's fair.
One's kind of a musical from the 60s.
Lighthearted,
Lighthearted, with the exception of the Shere Khan moments, whereas this one's much more dramatic throughout it with a little comedy spaced in.
Right.
So they completely reversed their...
And I'm fine with a sense of humor, but don't let it compromise what you're already doing. Yeah. Which I think, in a lot of ways, it kind of did.
Where do you think it did that the most?
I really, really, really loathed the I Want to Be Like You cover. I can deal with Murray's crooning. I'm actually one of the few people who thought A Very Merry Christmas is fine. I Want to Be Like You just sounded like a guy who does not sing, trying to sing, and...
Well, it's kind of funny you bring that up because they kind of were playing up Walken's whole, music
Walken
video
loves to sing and dance.
And dancing, so I mean, and they even make it like the ending credits, so I think they were kind of bulking on that. And like I said, if it wasn't Christopher Walken, I don't think it would be as charming, but since he does such a good job with that performance, and he's obviously playing a character who's insane, him breaking out into song kind of works.
That was clearly Justin's least favorite part of the movie.
So I agree with you.
I was cringing the entire experience.
I agree the musical numbers there were the worst part of the movie, but I wouldn't say it was like breaking the movie for me. They're two scenes. I
mean, I don't want to give an overly extreme comparison here, but it wasn't far off from reaching Russell Crowe and Les Mis caliber.
Yeah, but A, he sang the whole movie. This was only one song. And B, like Joe mentioned, I mean, it's Christopher Walken. No one expects him to be Frank Sinatra here.
He just wants to...
It's good because it's Christopher Walken.
That's kind of what they're going
Russell Crowe does not have the panache in any way, shape, or form of a Chris Walken. I think we can all agree with that.
You don't usually just smile by seeing it. I mean, I'm sure Russell Crowe has his fans, but it's not Walken.
Count me as not one of them.
You still have to see Gladiator, though.
True, and Cinderella Man. All right, well, let's get to the grades. Justin, you will be going first.
I leave this one with a B.
Joe?
I liked it quite a bit. A-.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. I think it is the best of the live-action redos of Disney classics.
Better than
A- as well.
Cinderella, huh?
Yeah, I think Cinderella was a B+. Cinderella was very good.
That was good, man.
I agree, but this is better than Alice in Wonderland, better than Maleficent. All right, well, up next is Barbershop, The Next Cut. In this film, Ice Cube returns as Calvin in the 4th overall installment of the Barbershop series, along with about a dozen other black actors, comedians, and or musical artists, such as Regina Hall, Cedric the Entertainer, Anthony Anderson, Eve, Common, J.B. Smoove, and Nicki Minaj, some of whom are returning to the series and some whom are new. In this one, the gang at Calvin's Barbershop, set in Chicago's violent South Side, attempts to improve the neighborhood by curbing the local gang violence, which may also be directly affecting Calvin's son, played by Michael Rainey Jr. It's directed by Malcolm D. Lee and written by Kenya Barris, who created TV's Blackish, and Tracy Oliver. Now, Joe, I know you have no prior experience with Barbershop.
Zero.
Justin, did you see the first one at least?
I wanted to, but I was short on time.
Okay, so that's a no.
Sorry.
You could just say no, Justin. That's fine. All right. Well, I have seen the first two originals. I never saw the Beauty Shop spinoff with Queen Latifah, although her character was in the first two.
Okay.
And doesn't appear here, but most of the spirit of those original two Barbershop movies are here. But they've added so many people to the cast that it definitely gets bogged down with a lot of characters that offer a little more than one-liners or response shots, which is unfortunate because I think some of the comedy definitely works, but some of it, because of that, is so rapid fire that it really doesn't. And also, Cedric the Entertainer's elderly barber, this was one of my big problems with the original two films. I can only understand like a third of what he says. It's, the mumbly joke, one-off.
How do you feel about the old face?
I'm fine with the old face. Did that bother you?
A little bit. Like, seriously, we couldn't drag out some older African American actor to try and pull this off. Instead, we have to get Cedric the Entertainer to pretend that he's 80.
Well, that's the bit. I mean, they did it in Coming to America, and I think it's an homage to Coming to America.
That makes sense.
I mean,
I'd agree with you, Justin, but I guess he's already been established as being that character, doing that bit already.
Yeah, it's what he's been.
It's unfair to drop him at this point since he's kind of one of the highlights.
Well, I guess Justin's saying from the get-go, the first movie, maybe they should have gotten an older actor.
That's basically it. Like, this did not factor into my grade. It was just something I wanted to stir the pot with.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't bother me. The old man dialect is what bothers me because I have trouble understanding what he's saying.
Definitely.
But what works the best here in this film, surprisingly, are the dramatic components. And there's a lot of them in this film. This is much more of a message movie than the first two. But honestly, I think it's been a while since we had a really good African-American message movie. I mean, you guys may disagree with Chirac, but, you know, the fact that it's coming from a series known for its comedy, I think is all the more impressive with how well it's handled. You know, Joe, I know in the early 90s, New Jack City, Juice, Boys in the Hood, I mean, there were a lot of South Central.
Yeah.
There were a lot of these movies focusing on race without it focusing on slavery 200 years ago.
Would you say that Dope fits in that category?
I guess I would. That's a good example. That's a good example. I think Dope would fit.
Do white people?
That's on.
Maybe a little generous.
Well, it is.
It is, I guess. I would say that verges more on the parody satire sort of line.
No, that's fair.
You know, this is definitely real world situation here. So, as newcomers to the franchise, what did you guys think of the next cut?
Well, I feel like I probably should watch the other movies to get a better sense of the characters and their journey.
I think at least the first one.
Because I felt like I was kind of missing some little things there. I might have appreciated the humor more. For what it was, I thought it was, you know, pretty good in terms of most of the execution of the comedy. But what really surprised me that I liked was the dramatic story.
Yeah.
Like that I was just not expecting that at all. And I thought for the most part it was well done. I do think that because it's a message movie, it does get a little preachy. And that does,
absolutely.
That does kind of bog down, I think, the strength of the message a little. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the performances were good. I actually think that, you know, I like being not really surprised per se, but just kind of validating that Ice Cube is a pretty good actor when he wants to be.
He really is.
When he wants to be being keyword there.
He's in some not great movies.
He is, but
sometimes.
But generally, I like him, and I think he's really in his element and stuff like this. I guess he knows the character. He's got his roots there, and I liked him here. I liked the story. I liked some of the.
Yeah, unless I'm wrong here, this is much like Friday. This is a character he created.
All right. Well, that it definitely feels that way. It feels very natural. It's, for the most part, enjoyable. I do think there are a lot of characters. I think I liked a lot of them, but I didn't feel like I knew a lot of them very well.
No.
Yeah.
So it was sort of half and half. I think it's kind of one of those things where the execution drags down the best parts, but the best parts that make up the central elements are still very good. Mm-hmm. You know, so I liked that. I just was really surprised because I was expecting to walk into this big comedy, and it was actually pretty intense sometimes.
Yeah, it was.
I was just not expecting.
I cried.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
It was really well done, and I'm still kind of thrown by it because I just didn't think this franchise was known for that type of thing.
It's really not, and that's sort of what Cube has been saying in the interview circuit, that they weren't really clamoring like, oh, hey, let's do a third Barbershop, but the studio came to him and said, hey, you know, why not? And he wanted to do something different, not just make Hangover 3.
Yeah,
you know,
understandable. But I mean, this is obviously first time experiencing this for the franchise. I got to tell you, gentlemen, I was pleasantly surprised. For probably the first 20 minutes, I thought it was a little inside. Obviously, these characters have been established. People know their brand of humor, Cedric the Entertainer being Cedric the Entertainer. But I think once the story sets in, we get some of the pieces in place, we get a much more cohesive story. I think it really does shine in that regard. And they find this really nice balance between the comedy and the drama. And there's one truly abysmal impersonation of a celebrity near the end that really...
That's during the end credits, though. I give end credit stuff a pass, usually. No, it was kind of tacky. Yeah.
But I really did appreciate that, and I think the message is definitely warranted, especially in this day and age. Mm-hmm. Does Nicki Minaj have absolutely zero potential of becoming a popular, competent actress?
Maybe with enough practice. behind the scenes.
She's pretty bad.
She's pretty bad.
Well, if somebody wants to break into a new career, that's fine, but you really got to work at it, especially if you don't have natural talent.
True.
I have a belief that you can accomplish a lot, but if she's not a natural, she's got to work at it.
Common's great, by the way.
Actually, he did a good job.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a good actor.
I actually liked him, yeah.
And Eve is fine.
Yes, I thought she was good as well.
You know, I mean, she's here. There's a rapper turned actress, and she's fine.
I'm not saying it can't happen. It's
Oh,
happened
no,
all the
no.
time.
No, but Nikki's one of the worst.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not always... Look, I think when they look at somebody like Cube, who literally went from being this influential rapper to actually doing pretty well in the movie industry, people try to emulate it. And not everybody can do it.
No.
I do have to ask you something, Dan, because obviously you're more familiar with it than Joe or I. Director Malcolm D. Lee directed this one. Obviously did The Best Man Holiday.
Correct.
Did he do the other two? Do you know?
I don't believe so.
Wait,
Best Man Holiday was good.
Yeah, I thought that was...
Wasn't excellent, but it was.
It was better than I thought it was going to be.
We were good. There were good things in it, I would say.
Yeah, like I was expecting like D plus D. It was a surprising C.
One of the few decent Terrence Howard performances.
Oh no, your favorite directed the first one, Justin. Tim Story.
Oh wow.
And the second one, unfamiliar. Kevin Rodney Sullivan.
Yep, got nothing.
So no, he didn't have anything to do with the first two.
Okay, it was just something I was wondering. Like, he's definitely showing that he's learning from his projects, and I thought that was a nice touch to this as well.
Well, I think like Best Man Holiday, this had too many characters, and he has that problem that directors that are on the newer end seem to have, where if there's too many characters, every time somebody's talking, it's
Bounce
straight on shot on them every time.
Very basic.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Very basic.
Though I mean, I would give Barbershop a little bit more of a pass on that, just because it's really just one general setting. Obviously, all these people are going to have round table kind of conversations.
Yeah, but you don't always have to have the same shot.
Oh no, you don't have to play bouncing head tennis, but
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to the grades, Justin.
B minus.
B plus.
Oh, well, I give it a B. Up next, we have Criminal. Joe, let's hear about this one.
Well, you give these to me. Okay, the logic this week was action.
The logic this week was Justin didn't want to do it at all. So I figure give him Jungle Book, and I know you're not a huge early Disney movie fan anyway.
That's true. Well, Criminal is it's interesting in the description. Okay, it's
This ought to be good.
It's an action / thriller / drama film directed by Ariel Vroman.
Sure.
And I feel like in
Did
that
you say Abe Froman? Sausage King of Chicago?
saw King of the Criminals.
Yeah,
I guess.
King of...
Yes.
That's right.
I think even in that first part of the synopsis, I think you can probably predict a problem with this movie. But the film is about this ex-con who's named Jericho. Talk about names in this movie. It'll be a whole other thing. But that's Kevin Costner, and he's implanted with this memory of a dead CIA agent's final assignment. And so the whole purpose is they're trying to implant the memories into him so they can find out where this hacker guy who has this terrorist wants, and otherwise the world will be blown up. Costner plays Jericho. Also, Gary Oldman and Tom Lee Jones star with him. And interestingly enough, apparently this is the second collaboration between those three actors since 91's JFK, which I can tell you right now is a much better movie than this one. Now,
I can only imagine.
I feel like I might end up being the devil's advocate for this one because
Oh, I'm sure you are.
I guess someone has to be. I will say I'm not sure if I can say that there are many great things in this movie or any good things, but there are things that are potentially good and things that I want to like in this movie, and things that are touched on that are kind of good, briefly, sporadically. And I would say that the whole premise, which is very much like Selfless, and I feel like somebody must have been talking to Ryan Reynolds and said, hey, there's this script floating around. You worked on that one movie. Would you be willing to be in this because you were in this one so people might draw some sort of weird connection? Because
it's okay. You only have to be on set for like a week.
It could be the same universe. It's the same basic.
It's the same basic concept.
Just reversing the roles in this case, which admittedly in of itself, I'm like, okay, that's something. But Selfless wasn't a very good movie, and this one isn't a very good movie. But for very different reasons.
Tell me more, Joe.
I will say that the premise does, of course, lead to the potential for good moral questions and the evolution of Costner's character, which they do touch on a bit, which is really the only story aspect that is, okay, I guess. Other than that, the performances are all right. I mean, it's not so much that the performances from the main actors are bad in and of themselves. It's the characters they're playing are either underdeveloped or stupid or just unlikable. And I would argue that's...
To put it politely, yes.
That's the biggest problem with this movie, really, is even if you just said the story's stupid, you've got your main components of the villains and everything, the problem is that for most of the movie, Costner's character is just so unlikable. And they're playing it up because he's this criminal guy with no sense of empathy, and he does these really bad things, and you want to see this character grow, and you can tell what they're trying to do. And in the scenes where Costner is dealing with the memories and he's showing off some kind of emotional spectrum, there's something there. There is, but the problem is, after they'll say this guy's changing his point of view, they'll have him murder a bunch of good people on the way to saving the day.
Yep.
And he's laughing about it. So I would say he's conflictive, but I just think it's sloppy.
It's bad writing.
But by the end of the movie, he's
wait,
basically embodied
No,
Ryan Reynolds.
But that's the thing, though. That's the thing, Dan. It's unclear.
It's
left
really unclear.
And it leads to this weird moral question of like, all right, so how much of Ryan Reynolds is this guy?
But you can tell the shift because he is a real D at the first, half of this movie.
Yeah.
Punching people out at Starbucks for no reason, cutting every line imaginable.
Yeah.
And then by the end, he clearly has this moral compass now. He's remembering more and more of what Ryan Reynolds was.
True. But that moral compass is there, but I think they try to play it almost like Ryan Reynolds is like sharing his mind or something, as opposed to him just having his memories.
Yeah,
it's never
which
really
is
clearly established.
Bizarre and poorly defined. Yes,
very much so. And I would say that, but I think the worst thing about this, though, for me, that bugged me the most was that most of the plot points hinge on the fact that Oldman's character is not only incompetent, but he's also a terrible person.
Yes.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it's just like you're trying to achieve this mission, and you'll say, okay, let's perform this random experiment as opposed to doing actual CIA work to find this guy.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Oh, it's not working within a day. Oh, get rid of him. And then, oh, it's working. Talk to him. Okay, fine. We found the guy. No, we get rid of him again. It's just.
But see, that's the problem, Joe. You were saying that Costner is unlikable for most of this movie. Oldman is horrible. The problem with this movie, among many others, is that nobody's likable.
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds' wife, Gal Gadot, is not likable. In the first scene, she meets Kevin Costner's character. He ties her up. Mm-hmm. He possibly wants to rape her. She doesn't know. And then the next time she sees him, he's down in the basement, and she has a gun, and she strikes up a conversation with him instead of blowing his head off.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then the doctor, Tommy Lee Jones, is awful. His character.
Well, he's weird because he's probably the nicest. He has
probably the best moral compass of anybody in the movie.
He's still kind of
but still, he's just like, well, we're 5 years away from human trials, but I guess if you need to do it, we'll do it.
I've only been working on this for 18 years. What the heck?
And none of that has, to do then with the actual villain of the movie. So it's like, the good people are villains, the villains are villains. Who
am I supposed to like?
Who are you supposed to like?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why. No, actually, that's the thing. The best person in the movie, upon thinking about it, is actually Matt Dillon's character. That's the Dutchman, because even though yes, he has this bad line where he's like, "Look, I just want freedom. It's not about the money. Just give me $10 million." Okay, obviously you want the money for freedom, whatever. But he has a moral compass because he says, "I don't want to give this to this guy. I don't want it to get in his hands. I want to go to the Americans." But the Americans are just trying to kill me and take it for themselves.
Yeah, true.
So he actually is fine, but that's the problem. If the Americans, who are supposed to be the good guys, Gary Oldman, are portrayed as just being selfish guys who are willing to kill Jericho or anybody out of whim, who do we get behind? And then he's the only person that kind of has anything at stake. And, unfortunately, he's got a bad Dutch accent, so you don't really care about him.
Well, there's a lot of bad accents in this movie.
Oh, painfully so. I kicked off this week thinking, why are we reviewing this movie? It seems like a colossal waste of time, and I don't feel any less convinced of that. I mean, I feel
because sometimes we have to review bad movies, Justin.
It's true.
I mean, here and there, but this one was...
only pick and choose good ones. This has a big cast with a lot of people that...
It has a big cast, but it reeks of big cast collecting a paycheck. And, I mean, Costner, once again, looks like he's sleeping through a role in probably... I would say his worst performance since 3 Days to Kill. I mean, I feel like the writers just like took Face Off, Selfless, and every generic bad 90s action thriller they could find. Costner is horrible. Oldman looks bored. The script makes absolutely no sense. And I just found myself saying to the screen, how much longer do I have here?
It was long.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty slow.
It's at
It
least
was
half an hour
definitely
too
long.
long.
But Costner's way worse in this than 3 Days to Kill.
I thought he was consistent.
Oh, yeah.
3 Days to Kill wasn't a good movie, but I mean...
He was consistent in it, though.
in this?
In 3 Days to Kill.
Yeah, in 3 Days
Yes.
to Kill he was. Here, there was a lot of grunting and like there was a lot of like guttural groans. He yells but like he just screams at people. He kills a woman at one point, and then he like leans down and just screams at her face.
I did not understand that
was
even remotely.
laughable. It was laughable, Justin.
Oh, this entire movie is basically laughable.
Also,
but
cover your wounds up. Why
Yes.
is he walking around town with this big gaping head wound?
Because he's dumb,
Yeah.
remember?
At the one point he wakes up and the pillow's covered in blood, and Gal Gadot's like, "Oh, that's all right. I'll take care of it." Why don't you get him a bandage?
yeah, seriously.
It's disgusting.
Oh, never mind. The other scene where he's like walking around town with this like horrible seeping.
All of his wounds.
Arm wound, yeah.
The back of his head when they
Never
took
got-
his brain out.
Yep.
Well, he puts a hat on because he's cold.
Yes.
His head's cold.
In the first part, but then the rest of the movie, he just is like, you know what? I'm too old. I don't care.
It's a valid argument, I guess.
Whatevs.
Yeah, whatevs.
I do think that there is an easy rule for the criminal drinking game, though. Drink every time they say Dutchman.
Yes.
Where
They
is
do
the
say Dutchman a lot.
Dutchman, get the Dutchman.
It was almost like the counselor. For a while, I didn't know who the Dutchman was. I was like, I don't understand what this means.
Actually, I forgot who the Dutchman was, and then when they brought him back, I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that guy."
I don't know how you guys could have forgotten because they bring him up a lot.
They do, but
They
I
do,
kept
but
forgetting his purpose because the plot is so muddled.
Exactly.
Plot, he is the guy that wants to get the wormhole. Got to get the
Well.
wormhole for the bad guy named Heimdall.
Yes.
This is the movie of cheesy.
One of
cliche
many
Oh, yeah.
names.
So many bad names.
Yeah. All right, well, Justin, let's have it.
Another F, gentlemen.
D.
Yeah, I there's a couple of guilty pleasure moments in this.
I can say I hate it.
So it's a D for me as well. It's
pretty bad.
really
It's bad.
bad, but yeah,
I was.
it's sort of
There
laughably
are a
bad.
couple of scenes that were kind of funny, like when he does yelling at people randomly, growling. "Ah!"
He blows up the cop car.
Yeah!
He yells out the window. Ah! Like,
I loved that.
what is this letting off
and,
steam?
and that's the point where he's the good guy.
I know he's supposed to be the good guy
He's-
after he blew up a bunch of cops.
What a great person.
Yeah.
The lovable sociopath.
Finally, this week we have Remember. In this film, Zev Gutman, played by the great Christopher Plummer, is a dementia-stricken nursing home patient who, with the help of a fellow Auschwitz survivor, played by Martin Landau, goes in search of the person responsible for the death of their families 70 years earlier. Dean Norris has a supporting role as, what else, a cop. Adam Egoyan directs. Now, guys, I think Christopher Plummer is outstanding in just about everything.
That's per usual.
As per usual.
I agree.
I think he plays this role as it needs to be. There's this weird sort of fine line with his dementia. It sort of goes in and out like it would. Sort of a little conveniently when it does for the script.
Yeah.
Put it lightly.
But he does a great performance. I would say he's certainly the best aspect of the film. I think the story itself is okay. I don't think it always rings through properly. There's some odd turns. The twist reveal at the end only sort of half makes sense. But I did like the journey there. I thought it was a pretty solid one. I thought his interactions with the various people he comes in contact with is fascinating. I think the structure makes it episodic. But one thing I liked about it is that in that regard, I think it would have been easy to do flashbacks in a lot of the aspects, especially with the different people that he meets. And they never really go that route, which I think is good. And I also don't think if they went that route, it would have detracted or added to the twist. I think it still could have worked either way, but I like that they chose to do it the way they did. What'd you guys think?
Well, I gotta agree with you. The Plumber is the be-all, end-all reason to see this movie.
Sure.
If for anything at all. But But for me, the biggest weakness of this overall movie is just it's really, really flimsy storyline. Some of it works, so much of it doesn't. And when there's something that doesn't really make sense, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you on the fact that it's episodic, but it's very hit or miss with that. Like, some of them work. The Dean Norris bit, wow, playing cop as per usual.
I've never seen him play anything else.
I mean, if it ain't broke, I guess, but
Yeah.
that's probably the one I think works the most efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
But there are others that just seem like, oh, look, here's what we can throw into to give a plot point, and it just doesn't work. The twist I actually liked, even though I think it goes on a little bit longer than it should. Joe, did you get this one?
Yeah, I did, actually. At first, I do think I can remember an instance where Dean Norris was not a cop. I believe in the often quoted movie The Cell, when I quote on here, I believe he was an FBI agent. So
Same difference.
it's sort
Law
related.
enforcement.
Yeah, some sort of, if it's DEA in Breaking Bad or cop here or whatever.
Well, I think his storyline was actually one of the more interesting for me because there was kind of almost a twist within that one itself.
Yeah, which I like
Which
that.
I didn't see that coming, so that was kind of cool. I think in terms of this one, there is an interesting potential story here, and I think that in the episodic nature of it, it's just that some, like you guys said, worked better than others. I think that the initial resolution I really liked, though. Like, I really did like the twist. I thought that it did have some impact, mostly because of Plummer's performance. But right from the get-go, though, I was thinking that there is definitely a big suspension of disbelief you have to have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
It's like, because it's just like,
I mean, I call complete BS on the whole gun scene.
the gun. Yeah, that was the first question. I'm
Yeah,
like,
true.
It was like he goes over all the reasons for the background check, and then he's like, "Oh, there are just some times. Could you write down how a gun works? Because sometimes I forget things." And the guy just kind of looks at him. "Oh yeah, sure.
Cool story, bro.
Happens to me. I'll write it down." Like, that was just not this day and age.
No.
And just even the fact that he's going off on this revenge tale, by himself with dementia, being convinced to do it by a friend. You can
How
already.
does he get out of the home, by the way?
They just kind of
Convenience.
they didn't really show it. It was just kind of like, I guess he slipped out and his friend arranged for all these things financially.
Because
But
his son is looking for him, I guess, but...
they have that scene where he's like, "Oh, he'll just turn up."
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I don't know. I thought
Really?
I think there's a lawsuit happening with that home
yeah.
there for sure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little issues that kind of drag it down. You just have to try to think less about. But I think at its core, as a revenge tale, it does try to do something new, which you did like. And I'm glad you pointed out the lack of flashbacks, because it's very easy to do that in this type of story.
Yeah, it really is.
And they didn't. They actually allow the characters and their portrayals to actually breathe that life into the movie without that. So it was good. Overall, though, I think that it's definitely not as good as it could have potentially been.
I do have to ask, though, how'd you feel about the super heavy-handed the way they phrase Gutman as Goodman?
Yeah, he'll correct you. It's Gutman? No, Gutman.
You're right. I think I said Gutman.
It's okay. It's the
You're right, Gutman. Zev Gutman.
Didn't know Martin Landau was still doing things.
Yeah, I sort of... Well, he doesn't do much. I mean, you sort of forget that he's still with us, to be completely honest.
True
Honestly,
story.
when I saw him,
I mean, he looked about 90 in Ed Wood.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, almost 20 years ago.
well,
Definitely.
he's still doing stuff, though.
Yeah, no, always a pleasure to see him again.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, we'll get to the grades. I give Remember a B-. Justin?
I leave it with a C.
I'm actually going to leave it with a B- as well, Dan.
All right.
It's mostly that ending.
Well, yeah, the ending wasn't my favorite part, but I did like the journey to get there. Well, that's going to do it for the show for this week. You can join us on the Facebook group Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, the Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod, and of course you can subscribe here on YouTube as well. And that will do it, so we'll see you next week.